The first human railgun fire cracked through the void like a heartbeat, sharp and impossible to ignore. Stars blurred into streaks of light as the projectile tore through space, faster than any alien fleet had ever imagined. Silence followed the shot, heavy and trembling, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. No one had seen humans fight like this before. No one, except the ones who had lived long enough to regret underestimating them. And now, every galactic throne, every seat of power, every empire built over millennia was trembling, threatened by something they had never learned to fear: the sheer audacity of human courage. On the command deck of a drifting warship, a figure watched the monitors with cold, measured focus. The railgun wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. The flicker of its first shot illuminated the captain's determined eyes, a silent promise that everything the galaxy believed about humans was about to shatter. Around them, a crew of humans moved with quiet precision, each aware that their actions weren't just about survival. They were rewriting the rules of engagement for every species that had ever dismissed them. The hum of the engines was low and tense, matching the collective heartbeat of those aboard, waiting for the inevitable response from the empires that ruled countless star systems. Far across the galaxy, in palaces of crystal and steel, alarms rang out. Strategists and kings, queens and warlords all stared at the reports streaming in, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. A single shot, fired by one human from a ship barely larger than some of their own drones, had ripped through defenses thought impenetrable. Panic spread quickly among councils that had long relied on fear to maintain order. Every galactic throne suddenly seemed fragile, every alliance suddenly suspect. The humans were not just fighting. They were rewriting what power meant in a galaxy that had never treated them as equals. Yet amid all this chaos, no one knew the full extent of what had just begun. The first railgun fire was only the beginning. Shadows moved in hidden corners. Secret networks of spies and mercenaries watched the aftermath with careful interest, and distant worlds waited, unaware that their fates were already entwined with a species that refused to bow. The question wasn't just whether humanity could survive, it was whether the galaxy could survive humanity's relentless audacity. And at the center of it all, the one who had fired that first shot stood silently, feeling the weight of what they had unleashed. One decision, one pull of a trigger, and everything changed. Ships would chase them, empires would rise and fall, and alliances thought unbreakable would crumble. But no one knew their next move. No one could predict the next strike. And the galaxy, for the first time in countless centuries, waited in dread. What would happen when the humans decided to fire again? What other galactic secrets were about to be shattered? The answer was out there, somewhere in the void, waiting to arrive with unstoppable speed. And the first human railgun fire was only the opening note of a story that would echo across the stars. Long before the first railgun fired, humanity had been quietly learning, observing the galaxy from the edges where no empire dared to look. While alien civilizations built dynasties of metal and ambition, humans had been refining something different: ingenuity, courage, and an instinct to survive against impossible odds. They were not the strongest species in terms of raw power, but in patience, creativity, and unpredictability, they had no equal. Every experiment, every hidden colony, every ship that slipped past patrols was a step toward the moment that had just shattered the galaxy's confidence. The humans on that small warship were more than soldiers. They were explorers, engineers, strategists, and thinkers molded by a world that demanded adaptation. From their first journey into deep space, they had known that the universe was indifferent, sometimes hostile, often cruel. Yet they had learned to use the universe's rules against it, turning limits into weapons. That first railgun shot was the culmination of centuries of preparation, and though it appeared sudden to the galaxy, it was decades in the making. Even now, as the aftermath of the fire rippled across star systems, the humans remained calm. They moved with a quiet confidence born not of arrogance, but of understanding. Each crew member carried stories of survival, of planets lost and reclaimed, of innovations born in desperation. In their eyes, the void was not a threat. It was an opportunity. And yet, there was tension beneath the calm, a recognition that the first shot had been noticed, and the eyes of the galaxy would soon be upon them. They were ready, but readiness was not certainty. Across countless light years, alien fleets stirred in response. The galactic thrones, once unassailable, now felt exposed. Some dismissed humanity as a fleeting annoyance, a minor species lucky enough to survive the margins of history. Others trembled quietly, whispering of an intelligence and tenacity they could not calculate. Reports of a human ship tearing through defenses traveled faster than any warship could, and councils that once operated in certainty now debated with fear. How could one species, so small, so young, possess the audacity to challenge the very pillars of galactic power? Amid this growing tension, the railgun operator, the one who had fired the first shot, studied the stars with a mind already several moves ahead. They knew that firing the weapon was only the first act in a much larger story. Every empire that had dismissed humanity would now seek to test them, to understand them, to crush them before they could rise. And yet, the operator felt a strange mixture of thrill and unease. For every advantage humans had gained, every surprise they delivered, also painted a target on their backs, one that could bring unimaginable danger in return. Somewhere in the shadows, secret observers took note. Mercenaries, spies, and mysterious agents of unknown origin were already plotting, sensing a shift in the balance of power. They had seen humans act unpredictably, strike where others would not, survive against odds that seemed insurmountable. And now curiosity and greed collided with fear. The humans had proven they were no longer to be ignored, but what they would do next remained a mystery, a threat, a challenge, a spark that could ignite chaos across star systems. And so, in the quiet before the storm, the humans prepared. They repaired, recalibrated, and waited. Every system they passed, every signal they intercepted, was another clue in a galaxy suddenly more dangerous, more alive, more uncertain. The next move would come, but from whom? From humans, from empires, or from forces none had yet seen. The universe held its breath, as did those aboard the small, determined ship, caught in the vast, silent space between what had been and what was coming. The galaxy was beginning to stir with whispers of rebellion and awe. Reports of the first railgun shot reached distant worlds in fragments, carried by fleets, traders, and rogue transmissions. Some hailed humanity as a rising force, a species that could change the balance of power. Others panicked, hurriedly issuing commands to fortify defenses, fearing that the humans' next move could erase centuries of careful rule. Every system seemed to vibrate with unease, the kind that came from realizing an unseen player was suddenly capable of rewriting history. On a command station orbiting a planet once considered untouchable, a council debated furiously. They argued over strategy, over data, over the meaning of a single human strike. One advisor warned that humanity's ingenuity was limitless, a threat that could not be measured in traditional weapons or fleets. Another dismissed the humans as reckless, overconfident, and prone to mistakes that would ultimately doom them. Yet even in disagreement, all felt the same unease. The humans had shifted the rules, and the galaxy had no answer ready. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship, the crew moved silently through their stations. They spoke in measured tones, but the tension was palpable. The railgun operator checked the calibration again, as if expecting the universe itself to resist. Nearby, engineers monitored the hull's integrity, aware that any engagement could bring retaliation from multiple directions. Every scan, Every sensor reading was a puzzle, a potential clue to the galaxy's reaction. They were ready, yet uncertainty lingered, a quiet reminder that survival required more than firepower. It demanded foresight, courage, and sometimes sacrifice. On the fringes of the galaxy, mercenaries and spies observed with sharp eyes. They noted human movements, studied patterns, and sent reports to shadowy masters whose motives remained unclear. These observers saw more than just a single railgun shot. They saw a symbol, a spark that could ignite revolutions or wars across multiple star systems. Some quietly admired the humans' skill and audacity, while others feared what might happen if the humans continued to defy expectations. Across the void, alliances began to shift quietly, some breaking apart, others forming in secret, all reacting to a force that had refused to bow to tradition. Closer to the humans' path, a small fleet of alien ships adjusted their course, alerted to the sudden disturbance. Their commanders debated whether to engage immediately or observe first, cautious of the human capacity for unpredictability. Every sensor ping, every anomalous reading reminded them of the railgun's devastating efficiency. The humans were not merely a threat of brute force. They represented a different kind of danger, one rooted in creativity and strategy, something no standard fleet could anticipate. Even within the human crew, tensions ran beneath the surface. Each knew that the first shot had changed everything, but no one could predict how far the galaxy would push back. Rumors of traitors, spies, and unknown enemies reached the ship's communications, but there was no panic, only focus. The humans understood that in the galaxy, survival was never guaranteed. It was earned moment by moment, decision by decision, shot by shot. As the stars stretched into lines outside the viewport, the first human railgun fire had left a mark deeper than anyone realized. It was more than a weapon. It was a signal. The galaxy had been warned, and now every empire, every throne, every shadow in the void began to move. But who would strike first? And when they did, would humanity be ready? Or had the railgun only begun a chain reaction that no one could stop? The tension hung in the cold silence of space, unbroken, unyielding, waiting to explode. The void seemed to close in around the human ship as distant engines flared to life. Alien fleets, once scattered and indifferent, were now converging, drawn by reports of the railgun's strike. Each sensor ping sent a ripple of tension through the crew. They had expected retaliation, but not so fast, not so coordinated, and certainly not from forces they had only seen in simulation. Every alert was a heartbeat, and every heartbeat reminded them that this was more than a fight. It was a test of human ingenuity against empires that had never imagined resistance from a species so small. On board, the railgun operator ran their hands over the controls, checking and double-checking every system. The weapon was their signature, their gamble, and their promise, but it was also a signal to every corner of the galaxy. Humans would not kneel. Around them, engineers adjusted shields, recalibrated thrusters, and silently shared glances that spoke louder than words. Each crew member knew the stakes. Failure here could mean extinction, not just for them, but for every human settlement in the outer systems. Far across the galaxy, councils convened in panic. Throne rooms that had always been calm, assured, and untouchable now buzzed with fear. Advisors argued over strategies that might stop humanity, yet every suggestion carried uncertainty. Some fleets were mobilized, others recalled from distant campaigns, all racing to intercept a single ship that seemed to defy logic and expectation. Every empire felt the pressure, and in every corner, a question whispered, "How does one fight a species that refuses to play by the rules?" Meanwhile, hidden observers moved in the shadows. Mercenaries, spies, and rogue factions watched the humans with equal measures of curiosity and dread. They knew the humans' capacity for unpredictability made them dangerous, but profitable to follow. Orders came and were broken, alliances shifted, and the galaxy's undercurrents roiled with activity, all triggered by a single weapon's first fire. It was a storm gathering momentum, one that promised destruction, chaos, and revelation in equal measure. Closer still, human tension was taut. Each decision felt monumental. Every signal, every scan, was analyzed as if seconds could decide fates. The crew knew that alien fleets were near, yet they moved with quiet precision, their confidence a fragile balance between strategy and instinct. Outside the viewport, stars streaked by, carrying them closer to confrontation, closer to the moment when preparation would meet chaos, when calculation would collide with unpredictability. The first contact was almost inevitable. Sensors picked up multiple formations, warships spanning sizes the humans had never faced directly. Missiles glimmered in the distance, targeting solutions calculated by algorithms the crew had spent lifetimes refining. The railgun hummed softly, ready, patient. In the captain's mind, every option was weighed: strike first, strike last, or find a path none would expect. Every second stretched like the void itself, heavy with the weight of the choices ahead. And in that silence, just before chaos erupted, the crew felt it. The same pulse the galaxy would feel moments later. A confrontation was coming, one that would test everything humans had built, everything they had learned, and everything they dared to risk. The railgun had been the spark. The galaxy's response was about to become the fire. All that remained was the moment before the storm, when anticipation and dread combined, and the universe seemed to hold its breath. Just as the alien fleets closed in, a sudden anomaly lit up the sensors. At first, the crew thought it was a malfunction. Space was unpredictable, after all, but the readings were undeniable. Another human vessel, long thought lost to the edges of explored space, emerged from a cloaked trajectory, moving with precision and purpose. It wasn't just a reinforcement, it was something else entirely. Its presence changed everything. Questions raced through the crew. How had it stayed hidden? How had it survived? And most importantly, what was its mission? The ship's sensors flickered, catching glimpses of its weapon systems, advanced and unfamiliar. It was human, but not like anything the fleet had deployed. Engineers whispered theories, but none felt adequate. The captain's hand hovered over the comms, hesitant to make contact before understanding the implications. Every choice now carried more weight. The railgun, already a symbol of humanity's audacity, suddenly seemed like only the beginning of a much larger game. Meanwhile, the alien fleets faltered in response. Their coordinated advance wavered as confusion spread among commanders. A single human ship had been disruptive enough. Now, a second, unaccounted-for force appeared, moving with uncanny precision. Strategic calculations, the kind that had dictated empires for centuries, became unreliable. Signals of uncertainty raced through alien channels. Was humanity stronger than anyone realized? Were these ships working together, or were they independent agents with their own hidden agenda? Back on the first ship, tension tightened like a coil. The crew adjusted their focus, monitoring both approaching fleets and the mysterious ally, or potential threat, moving alongside them. Each second brought more data, more uncertainty. The railgun hummed in standby, but now it was not just a weapon against alien empires, it was a tool in a puzzle they didn't fully understand. Every maneuver, every calculation, had to account for a force they had not anticipated: themselves. Even more alarming, unexpected transmissions began to flood their communication networks. They were garbled, fragmented, coming from sources that didn't appear to match any known fleet or human settlement. The messages hinted at intelligence far beyond the crew's comprehension, suggesting secrets the humans themselves had yet to uncover. Who had sent them? And why now, at the very moment the galaxy teetered on the edge of confrontation? The sense of being watched, of being manipulated, made the situation even more dangerous. Tensions on the human ship reached a boiling point. Engineers argued over whether to engage first or wait for the new vessel to reveal its intentions. The railgun operator prepared for an eventual strike, calculating trajectories that might not even be necessary, or might trigger catastrophic consequences. Every member of the crew understood that the anomaly could either save them or destroy them, and there was no way to predict which outcome would come first. Outside, the galaxy seemed to pulse with anticipation. Alien commanders recalculated. Mercenaries in the shadows shifted allegiances. Hidden observers murmured in disbelief. The humans had already rewritten the rules once, and now, with an unexpected second force in play, the scale of conflict threatened to spiral into chaos beyond imagination. Every eye, human and alien alike, focused on the unfolding moment. The railgun had been the spark, but the fire was spreading, faster, wider, and far more unpredictable than anyone had prepared for. And so, as the two human ships aligned their paths in the endless black, the void itself seemed to tighten, bracing for the collision of strategy, courage, and raw audacity that was about to erupt. The next moments would define not just the crew, not just humanity, but the fragile balance of power in the galaxy, and no one, not human or alien, knew which side would gain the upper hand. The human ships surged forward in perfect synchronization, their movements a dance of precision honed through years of survival and ingenuity. The railgun fired again, this time not at a single target, but into the heart of the converging alien formation. The projectile tore through the void with blinding speed, ripping apart shields and scattering fleets like paper in a storm. Alien commanders reeled, their centuries of strategy undone in moments by the humans' audacity. Every empire that had underestimated humanity felt the shock, not just of the strike, but of the realization that they were facing something entirely different, something no calculations could contain. On board, the crew watched in tense silence as the devastation unfolded. Sensors tracked dozens of enemy vessels being disabled or forced into retreat. Engineers exchanged quick nods, knowing their efforts had tipped the balance. The railgun operator exhaled, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. But the moment was fleeting. Victory had been claimed, yes, but at the edge of the known galaxy, every decision carried consequences that no one could yet predict. The mysterious second human vessel, previously unaccounted for, revealed its purpose. It moved deliberately through the wreckage, intercepting survivors, offering rescue and warning. Communications opened, confirming it was a long-lost human exploration ship that had survived on stealth technology beyond anyone's knowledge. Its crew had been watching, learning, and preparing to join the fight at the decisive moment. The revelation ignited hope across the human command structure. Humanity had not only survived the galaxy's neglect, but had grown stronger, smarter, and more united than any empire could anticipate. Alien fleets, shaken and demoralized, began to withdraw, leaving a trail of destroyed or crippled ships. For the first time, humans felt the thrill of dominance, the clarity of taking control of their destiny. The galaxy, long dominated by fear and hierarchy, had shifted in a heartbeat. But amid the triumph, a subtle tension lingered, unspoken, yet impossible to ignore. The void was not empty, and the anomaly they had sensed earlier remained unresolved. Then it appeared. A massive object, moving at impossible speed, approached the human ships from beyond the battlefield. Its design was unlike anything the humans, or even the alien empires, had catalogued. It was intelligent, precise, and undeniably hostile. Sensors scrambled to identify it, but every reading contradicted the next. It carried the unmistakable signature of advanced energy manipulation, and it was heading straight for the humans, as if drawn by the very railgun fire that had rewritten the galaxy's balance. The captain's voice cut through the tension. "Prepare for impact! This isn't over!" The crew, already battle-hardened, snapped into action, knowing that while they had won the first conflict, something far greater had just entered the stage. The railgun hummed in readiness once more, engines flared and shields charged, but uncertainty gripped every mind. Humanity had shattered galactic thrones, proven its ingenuity, and survived impossible odds. But now, in the endless expanse of space, a new, unknown force threatened to challenge everything they had achieved. The stars stretched before them, cold and indifferent. The first human railgun had ignited a war. The humans had reshaped power in the galaxy, and yet the final chapter was still unwritten. The crew exchanged a glance, a mix of determination and unspoken fear, knowing that the story was far from over, and that whatever came next, humanity would face it on its own terms. The unknown vessel slowed unexpectedly, hovering just beyond the edge of the human fleet. Its presence was imposing, yet there was no immediate attack. The sensors picked up subtle signals, patterns that suggested intelligence, observation, even curiosity. For a moment, the crew allowed themselves to breathe. The battle had ended. The alien fleets were in retreat, and humanity had proven it could stand against the galaxy's most powerful empires. The first human railgun fire had become a symbol, a statement that humans would no longer be ignored or underestimated. Across the ship, the crew reflected quietly on everything that had happened. Every challenge, every decision, every calculated risk had led to this moment. Engineers repaired minor damages, operators recalibrated systems, and the captain reviewed the reports. The humans had survived impossible odds. But more importantly, they had done it together. Each member of the crew realized that the true power of humanity wasn't just in weapons or technology. It was in their ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to act boldly when the universe demanded it. The mysterious second vessel had joined the fleet fully now, its crew sharing knowledge, coordinates, and insights from years of hidden observation. They spoke of systems untouched by empire, of threats they had quietly monitored, and of opportunities the human race could seize. The alliance felt natural, as if long-separated parts of the same species were finally uniting. Together, they began mapping the next phase of exploration and defense, understanding that victory in one battle was only the beginning of humanity's journey across the stars. Back on the bridge, the captain looked out at the galaxy. Stars glittered like distant promises, each one a reminder of the worlds waiting to be explored, the challenges yet to be faced, and the civilizations that would soon come to know humans not as a curiosity, but as a force to be reckoned with. It was humbling, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. The first railgun shot had been a warning, but now, humanity's presence had become a beacon, proof that courage and ingenuity could change the course of history. Even the alien empires watching from the edges of space would remember this day. The galaxy had shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly, but irreversibly. Thrones once thought unshakable had been shaken, fleets once confident now second-guessing, and every corner of the void had been reminded that humanity's potential was limitless. Fear and respect spread alike, and the echoes of the first railgun fire continued to ripple outward, a story that would be told for generations. And yet, for all the triumph and strategy, the humans remained vigilant. The unknown vessel, still observing, reminded them that the galaxy was far larger and stranger than they could ever imagine. The future was uncertain, full of possibilities and dangers alike. But for the first time, humans were ready. They had faced the impossible and survived. They had shattered expectations and earned a place among the stars. As the fleet regrouped and prepared to chart new systems, the captain turned to the crew and said quietly, "This is just the beginning." The words carried weight, not as a threat or promise, but as a reflection of what humanity had become. Bold, resilient, and unbound. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time, the human race looked at them not with fear, but with purpose. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would they. Humanity had fired the first railgun, shattered galactic thrones, and learned that courage, unity, and ingenuity were the true weapons of survival. The story had ended, for now, but its impact would resonate across the stars forever.